We got a lot to talk about this week. We are talking about Married at First Sight, which, as everyone knows, has blown up over the last week with all sorts of allegations, two contestants alleging they were raped, and further allegations are continuing to come. And we'll be talking about that.
We're going to talk about, there was a big event this weekend which combines a number of our bugbears on this show, which is the Enhanced Games, which is essentially Tech Bros meets abuse of sport.
And we're also going to talk, it's Stephen Colbert's final show. We're a little bit of a goodbye to all that and what's next for both him and perhaps even late night.
Exactly that. And also we are looking for your questions, please, for following our Paul McCartney interview and the Tom Hanks one coming up. We're talking to Steven Spielberg. That's fun, isn't it? Mr. Spielberg.
Mr. Spielberg.
We don't come up with the questions. You do. You know how that works. So please send any questions you have to The Rest is Entertainment at goalhanger.com. Anything you've ever wanted to ask Steven Spielberg, and we will put your questions to him.
I'm dying for it so much. So excited about that one.
The Rest is Entertainment is presented by Octopus Energy. Now, the moment someone becomes properly famous, they stop travelling as a person and they start travelling as a situation. And yes, I am talking about the world of entourages.
It's amazing. Anytime you do a TV show when someone properly famous comes on, it's sort of, you can just have a spread bet as to how many people they're going to bring with them.
Most people don't actually need a bodyguard and a fixer and a straw lady, but not having to start from scratch every single time you get in contact with someone is actually undeniably appealing.
So Octopus Energy, anytime you ever ring any company, you start from scratch right from the beginning again. With Octopus Energy, they recognize your number, and that goes through to a very, very small team of around 10 people who are there to deal with you. So you'll almost certainly be dealing with someone who you have dealt with before. That's the Octopus Energy entourage that they've built around you.
A great satisfaction not having to tell your story for new every single time, which I think most major celebrities also feel.
Shall we start with Married at First Sight?
Married at First Sight, which is a Channel 4 show here. It's made by CPL Productions.
Channel 4's biggest show.
Oh, by
quite some way.
It's enormous. Even things like Bake Off, if you look at what the streaming figures, it's unbelievable. It's a million miles ahead of it. The Panorama investigation, former contestants, 2 women say they were raped by their on-screen partners. Another said there was a non-consensual sex act. Some say that actual violence has taken place. The men who have been at the centre of the allegations so far deny the allegations. CPL have pushed back and say that they have sort of higher standards of welfare on this programme. Channel 4 have removed every single episode of it from their service. TUI have ended their sponsorship of it, having initially paused it. This is a show that is created by the sort of high priest of modern reality dating shows, a guy called Chris Colin in the US. And there's a lot of stuff of him talking about the show, which I think will be interesting and we will get to. But they even have a new series in the UK that's yet to be aired. There
is, and in the same way we talked a while ago about the Bachelor in the States that they've had to can. I wonder if this is where that's going to end up with this being canned. I can't see a world in which that isn't where this ends up.
Well, let's talk a little bit, because also Noor Nanji, who did the BBC Panorama investigations, talked a bit about how the investigation, it's always interesting when people sort of take you a bit behind the scenes, and that's become quite a feature of...
She also did the Greg Wallace investigation. In fact, she talks about it. She says, I think, because she's a culture correspondent, she says, I sometimes think people think that it's sort of quite a lightweight area. And she says, I hope I'm sort of proving that it isn't, that actually a lot of what's going on in this world, you can look at via culture. So I think full marks to Noor Nanji. What an incredible job.
The premise of Married at First Sight, sorry, if anyone isn't aware of it, you are matched with someone, you meet them for the first time on your wedding day, actually, as you know, for a long time, which was my anxiety dream. You meet the person you're getting married to on the wedding day, and then you sort of live together and see where it goes.
It's sort of like a marriage backwards.
Yeah. Anyway, a woman who'd been a bridesmaid at one of these sort of confected weddings at the beginning came into the BBC, and she sort of said made allegations of sexual misconduct and raised welfare concerns. Noor Nanji says that when they started approaching the men, one of the men's legal firms told the BBC that their fees were being paid by CPL, which is the production company, which she thought was odd because the women felt somewhat unsupported for obvious reasons. The morning of the Panorama broadcast, Noor Nanji says CPL, the production company, emailed participants warning against talking to the press.
Well, I think even the week before, they were essentially, they were calling the allegations wholly uncorroborated and disputed.
They've got a new chief executive at Channel 4, Priya Dogra. At first, she didn't apologise and she said she felt sympathy. She has now apologised. Channel 4 have said that based on the knowledge they had at the time, they made the right decisions in proceeding with the welfare and they did in the way that they did and with broadcast in the way that they did, which to me suggests that the strategy for this is evolving quite erratically, or they would probably say pragmatically, but they haven't been aware of these allegations since April because that's when the BBC first went to them, and we are in late May. So I would say it's quite interesting how they're handling it. What they have hastily now announced, now it's all become public, Channel 4, is that they've commissioned a review in two halves. So there's one in which a legal firm will look at how Channel 4 handles the allegations and allegations within the show, and one which will look at welfare provisions and protocols.
Which is the key. With duty of care, we would always have called it on TV reality shows, which is the responsibility you have to anyone who's a participant in a programme that you've created and you've essentially put them on.
Yes. So that's the background. And I think it's interesting because there is a sort of sense that reality TV had sort of reformed after what is popularly regarded as the kind of Wild West of, 20 years or a bit more ago. And for me, I think reality has become very sort of class demarcated, that you've got the biggest shows and the most prestigious shows on television are reality TV, and they're celebrity reality, and they're things like Traitors or Strictly or whatever it is.
And it depends what you mean by reality TV, but essentially we're talking about that kind of unscripted game shows that have members of the public / celebrities taking part in some form of artificial reality.
Yes, and you look at it, or a bubbled world or whatever it may be, and which I think is relevant here. What happens with those sort of shows is that you'll get like some of the biggest stars in the world saying, oh yeah, I'll do it for 40 grand. I'll go to a castle in Scotland for 40 grand. So you've got that. Then you've got a sort of middle class, things like Bake Off and things like that. But then there is this giant underclass of shows that are very, very popular. Married person, I would include Love Island. There's Love is Blind, another Chris Colin format.
Yeah, and by the way, those three shows, for their respective broadcasters and in lots of territories, are three of the biggest shows in the world. They are huge money makers. So Love is Blind, Love Island, Married at First Sight, enormous franchises. The money they are minting for the people behind them is absolutely off the scale. It's just worth remembering that.
Married at First Sight is in, I think, 33 countries, maybe it's definitely above 30. I mean, all of them are, and they are hugely successful. I definitely think this will be the first of a lot of stories in this area. And so I saw one of the lawyers for one of them saying, oh, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Lots more people, once they see people coming forward about these things, will come forward for all those shows. I mean, we already know that there are always concerns about those things. There have been a number of suicides in the wake of Love Island. There have been all sorts of things. And we know there in the US, which we'll get onto, I mean, there are numbers of complaints against these shows, particularly against these Chris Colin reality dating formats. If you're a UK production company and a UK public service broadcaster, as Channel 4 is running one of these things, you must be expecting this to happen because you can look around the world and see that it happens everywhere, that people eventually start complaining. And I think this is a bit like TV fakery. We're going to see lots of stuff coming out now.
I think that's right. And it's interesting to think what CPL are thinking, what Channel 4 are thinking. And it's very, very easy to get swept along on a tide of what's new in television and to understand that something like Married at First Sight is a phenomenon around the world, and to kind of say, oh, there's a new generation who grew up with reality TV, and when you put them on it, they really understand what it is they are doing. It's not like, the first series of Big Brother when everyone was walking into a situation they didn't understand. I think people think, oh no, they think this generation are cool. I think they understand it more than we do. I think, so
that's handy.
Yeah, isn't it handy? And I think that when reality TV started, duty of care is a very interesting thing because, as you say, it's always been there. There's always psych tests. Everyone always undergoes, criminal records checks and all those types of things. And it's been tightened and tightened and tightened over the years. And, follow-up kind of interviews with people have got more and more and more. But what has really changed is the form that reality TV is taking. When you look at that early reality TV, Big Brother, even the early series of Love Island, Survivor, it is a closed world. It's a closed set, and as producers, which also includes, by the way, psychologists and people involved in the duty of care, you have some at least illusion of control over what's happening because you have an entire world and every single inch of that world is covered. Because you have a camera on every single thing. The only time something isn't covered is if someone is under a sheet.
Yeah.
That's literally, but every single thing, you've got every single bit of footage, every single interaction between everybody throughout. So there's a world in which you can spot things very, very quickly. There's a world in which you can kind of convince yourself that you can be the master of that world. However, now reality shows are far more out in the real world. And Married at First Sight it's much less of a precinct. It expands outwards. The sense you're in a bubble for the participants absolutely does, but the sense they are in a bubble for the producers does not, and that's the worst combination of all, because people still have that Stockholm syndrome. People still think they have to do what the cameras want. People still understand that there is fame to be got from either being lovable on a show or being dramatic on a show. All those things still exist, but the producers have less control over the real world aspects of it. And I think that that's what's playing out here. And I think the avalanche begins now.
I want to talk about Chris Colan's shows, particularly because I think he's talked a lot about this type of thing because they have had lots of lawsuits against their shows in the US. He's created these shows where you can't quite believe the premise, like Married at First Sight, obviously,
Well, you can't believe the premise because it's not real.
No.
Because they're not really getting married.
But it's sort of so extreme compared to what we used to see he does all about, it's all dating. There's Love is Blind, when they're sort of dating through a wall, Perfect Match, which I don't think anyone's looking for long-term love there, but that's quite interesting. He calls it the summer fling to these other shows. Then The Ultimatum, The Spouse has all of these things. The reason he says he's really obsessed with dating shows is because he thinks the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
And he says that Married at First Sight is not format-driven. It is story driven.
Yeah.
He says, what the shows are sort of asking is, how does attraction work? How can you tell if people are really in love? Can you can you manage it? Can you create it? Chris Colan will always say, oh, it's all a choice. I'm making a documentary. That's what he loves to say. It's not a format. No, you're not making a documentary.
You're aware of the febrility, is that a word? Something is febrile of the situation you're putting people in. And you are ratcheting that up time and time and time again because that gets ratings, and ratings equals money. So which, by the way, that's the age-old story of television. You want ratings and you want money, and that's what he's doing. But it's disingenuous to say anything other than that. He's not turning a camera on and just seeing what happens. He's not David Attenborough.
The producers have always had an unbelievable amount of control within these environments. And
by the way, when people say that, because people sometimes say, just to be clear, all these things are scripted. The edit is X, Y, and Z. Really, what the technique is to throw in a mechanic that changes everything and then sit back and see what happens. It's not, we're going to do this and then we're going to do that and then we're going to do that and then we'll film that and that's going to make that story. Genuinely, the idea is like on any TV show, like on a panel show, is we have this structure, we do this, we ask this question, we pull this lever, and then we just see what happens. That's the thing that they want to do until the point where that runs out of steam, and then we pull another lever. Which, by the way, they don't really do in documentaries.
No. What's gone wrong here is really a function of the idea itself, in a way, because it is all so unreal. You may be married, but you are divorced from reality by design. Any welfare is reactive. I've read a lot of people this week talking about it, former contestants in these types of shows. There's an interesting article by someone who is in Love Island who said all the welfare and duty of care stuff is reactive and not proactive. And the fact is that when you are removed from everything and you're in a bubble, it's a bit like Karen in Goodfellas saying, after a while it gets to feel normal. And a lot of people don't understand, when you're in a big immersive world and you're isolated from your friends, your families, maybe even your phone, from all sorts of things, it's often that we already know this about sexual assault or alleged sexual assault or anything. It's only afterwards that you realise what really happened and how undesirable a situation was. And that happens anyway in cases of sexual assault. We understand far more about it than we ever did before. Never mind when you're in a sort of bubble and you really have almost all of your kind of normal checks and balances removed from you. You then also have a welfare team who work for and are paid by the production.
Would not accuse a single one of them, by the way, of entering into this with any sort of ill intent. I think people are trying to make a great television program, and this is the show, you know, there's a big hit around the world. I think it started in Denmark, but, you know, Australia was the one where Britain really fell in love with this format. So, of course, you're going to make it, and Channel 4 are excited, and they go, we'll make it, but we do have to understand that there are lots of issues here, and we have to be very careful with it, and the producers would have taken that very, very seriously. It got so huge, such a huge show. So the, you know, the marriage is sort of meaningless in a way. It's what it leads to and the fame it leads to and the Instagram followers that it leads to. And it becomes such a juggernaut that the people, I think, who commission it and produce it do not have the capability, and these are very capable people, they do not have the capability to control the thing that has been unleashed. They have created something that feels like the sort of cutesy reality experience we used to do, and becomes a real world thing and becomes an incredibly complex and difficult real world thing. And it's not appropriate for that to be run by the people who are running it.
Yeah. There is something else that Chris Colin says, that he aspires for his shows to teach empathy and so on, but also that the conversations around the shows evolve with and reflect the culture. And one thing that I've just been thinking about this all week, and because I've been thinking about it before, and I know I've talked to you about this before, but there's a sort of wider point about how toxic dating is in contemporary culture. And obviously the premise is absolutely crazy. What, you get married to someone and you've never met them? Only in a world where already everyone is being sort of matched by machines.
Yes.
And people are completely exhausted and twisted by the apps. How much you hear about app fatigue and all of this. What used to be an organic human connection has become a sort of algorithmically controlled market. It's an aspect of platform capitalism. It's twisted in its best sense, you know, as in, not in its best sense, but you know, your real world, if you're not on one of these shows or not on anything, even that experience for people is kind of miserable and awful.
Why not get married to someone I've never met before on TV? Because everything else has failed.
Well, only against that general real world backdrop that everyone is going through can these kind of bizarre, weird, artificial premises seem somehow, maybe it's more real, maybe it's more desirable than just many of the kind of tech mediated alternatives.
And it's, you know, sitting around a table thinking up TV shows is something I did for many, many years, and it's a fun thing to do. And it seems that we're at a stage now where you think, well, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's hard not to when people, listen, we have to talk about the complicity of everyone here, which is the program makers, which are the channels and the viewers. It is one of those things where it's built and built and built. And, you know, we've seen different versions of this, different iterations of it. We love the drama, watching the drama of it. And it is very easy as a broadcaster, as a program maker, and as a viewer to step away from the reality of the thing. You think, no, hold on. We're in a very, very, very toxic culture at the moment. We are putting young people on television who absolutely are digital natives, but perhaps they're not, you know, emotional natives. Perhaps they, you know, they don't have absolute control over their place in the world. And the moment something like this happens, you have to stop and go, yeah, do you know what? That's probably too far. That was probably enough. And I think that's why I can't imagine they're going to show the next series of Married at First Sight. I just can't see it because I just don't think it feels an appropriate thing to put people through with the knowledge we now all definitely have. Yeah. That was always at the back of our brains, but wasn't at the pleasure center at the front of our brains.
No.
One thing it does tell you about our culture is we do at least take these things seriously. Firstly, brilliant work from Noor and Nanji for putting this whole thing together. And the real measure of our culture is what happens next.
Yes.
I think it's it's a horrific story, and it's not just on the channels and the producers, it's on us viewers as well. But so we all have to, I think, kind of get around the table and just go, what is okay and what isn't okay? And this feels like maybe it's on the other side of the line of what is okay. And here's the real issue that's going to happen is, you know, we're in a situation now where CPL have duty of care and Channel 4 have duty of care. And we as viewers are, you know, part of a long lineage of reality TV shows. But if we think it's the Wild West now, all of this stuff is now starting on YouTube. All of these new formats are starting on YouTube where there is not that oversight. The money you can get for making a reality show on YouTube now is absolutely immense. The sort of personalities who can run these sort of shows are as well. So we are going to get an awful lot of experiments in the next 2, 3, 5 years along these lines, which we have almost no oversight over whatever. So the whole situation is going to get much, 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 much worse because all of these protocols that broadcast television has had to develop over the years, they do not apply to this new generation of program makers, and they will make new mistakes. I'm talking about the fall of civilization. After these adverts, we're going to be talking about the enhanced games, which was on Sunday, and I would say it's quite a spectacle, but perhaps not in the way that the organisers were hoping.
This is the athletic competition where all competitors are allowed and in fact encouraged to take performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Lloyds. Now, I love it when characters are part of a club. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Richard?
The Thursday Murder Club in some ways reminds me of the A-Team.
I would now like to map each of those characters onto the A-Team and feel I probably could. I mean, Elizabeth is Hannibal and it's not even close.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And Ron is Howling Mad Murdoch.
Well, there are definite perks to being in a club. Just ask the members of Club Lloyds. Because with Club Lloyds, you can bank on Lloyds to give you more wherever you are.
If you join Club Lloyds, there's all sorts of benefits you can choose between. There's, for example, 6 free cinema tickets.
They've got an annual coffee club and gourmet society membership, which would be mine.
And also something that the Thursday Murder Club would enjoy very, very much indeed.
Yes.
To top it all off, you have fee-free spending abroad, which means wherever you are, you won't be charged by Lloyds to use your debit card when you're travelling. Now, joining this club costs £5 per month, but that is refunded in any month that you pay £2,000 into your account.
Now, that is a club that's worth being part of. Check out Club Lloyds today. You'll need to be a UK resident and aged 18 or over to apply.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, the enhanced games, Richard. Swimming, sprinting and weightlifting, I believe. 42 athletes.
I was going to say, not as you know it, but maybe as you know it, because everyone's on drugs.
Yeah.
It's described as the Olympics on steroids, but in this case, literally. And it happened on Sunday. You'll be shocked to learn where it happened. Actually, there's 2 places it might have happened. One was Riyadh, it wasn't there. The other was Las Vegas, and it was there. Perhaps next year it'll be in Riyadh. And it is a competition where athletes, some of whom are genuine Olympians in the swimming, sprints and in weightlifting, attempt to break world records by using performance-enhancing drugs. It's run by a guy called Christian Angermeyer, who made a fortune from psilocybin tablets, magic mushrooms.
He's like AI, psychedelics and crypto.
Yes.
Yeah, absolute perfect
Although
storm.
the more I read about it, the more I liked him. I'll say that. Yeah, we will get to him.
It's also backed by Peter Thiel.
Donald Trump Jr.'s venture capitalist firm are investors as well. Now, it's called the Enhanced Games, and not because, it's, games, but it's enhanced. It's called Enhanced because it is sponsored by a company called Enhanced, and that is Christian Angermeyer's company, and they will essentially sell you peptides and testosterone and all of these things that we've spoken about before when we talked about looks maxing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
This world in America that seems to be getting less and less regulated, especially with the rise of RFK, where you can improve who you are.
All the biohacking, all the self-optimization, all the longevity particularly that these guys are sort of heavily invested in. And the event was connected to a platform where you can...
The event was connected to a shop.
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is. And
when it first came out, Seb Coe, he was chairman of World Athletics at the time, said, this is all bollocks. I don't get sleepless nights over it. No one's going to watch it. No one's going to... people thought no one would screen it. It's like, have you looked at the media over the last few years? Don't worry, someone will. And it was actually on Roku's YouTube channel.
Yes, which is not nothing, by the way, these days.
No, not at all. We live in a completely different media landscape. And so, as we've just talked about before the break, don't think that no one will screen it because someone will always screen it.
Yeah.
They had it last night, but they had a training camp a few months ago in Abu Dhabi.
That was in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, and again, it's all like, I don't know where the stage of this is, but it will obviously, because it hasn't come out yet, because they will obviously have to take in the games itself, but Ridley Scott's company was going to make a documentary about it, and it was going to be produced by Rob McElhenney, obviously Welcome to Wrexham. It's all just content, isn't it? It's all
Well, it's not even just content; it's an advert, and so it's fascinating. We talk a lot about how sport is the only game left in town, really, on broadcast television, and because you have to watch it live and because it has this sort of genuine drama. But, if you look at, so Enhanced, which had an IPO and is worth over $1 billion, this company that will sell you peptides and all sorts of things, in their entry to the Securities Exchange when they had their IPO, they described the Enhanced games as simply a marketing tool. This is not their company. They're not building this thing. This is literally a marketing thing. And, they've encouraged all these sports people to come and do it, and they put it on Sunday, and lots of people watched it. Now, the interesting thing about it is the sports people who were doing it, and there's all sorts of people who did it. Fred Curley, who was an Olympic 100-meter medalist, he did it clean, weirdly. There's a few athletes in this, Hunter Armstrong, the swimmer as well, who competed clean.
I saw him beat everyone clean.
Which we will get to. Literally the only clean athlete in the race.
You've ruined the advert.
Yeah, you've ruined our advert, Hunter. Whether they are clean or not, because they can't dope test them.
We have to get to the basics of, for how many years have people said about the Olympics, I don't know why they don't just let them all take drugs and get on with it. Well, okay, firstly, because it's dangerous, and also it's ethically bankrupt, etc.
This is a more interesting thing than it first seems, because at first sight, it seems like a circus. And you think, oh, great, the tech bros, of course, are pumping people full of drugs and then, winding them up like toys and looking to see if they can break world records. But actually, you look at someone like Ben Proud, who's the British swimmer, who's a silver medalist in the Olympics. I mean, that's about as good as you can get in any, lots of people swim. It's really difficult. And he's one of the very, very best in the entire world. And, he says, I don't make any money out of it. So I don't make any money out of it. Someone has said to me, I'll give you $1 million if you break a world record.
Yeah, the prizes at this games were extraordinary, really, really big money.
Someone has also said, I'll give you £250,000 if you win the race. And there's only 4 people in the race, by the way. He says, well, that's 13 years of national championships that, I would get the same money.
I saw 46% of elite athletes earn under $15,000 a year.
There's track and field and swimming and weightlifting. They've chosen very, very wisely, because these things are high profile, but you don't make an awful lot of money. If you're Usain Bolt, you make a lot of money. Most people do not make a lot of money. So there is this group of people who are incredible athletes who, by the way, throughout their entire career have been at the absolute cutting edge of how to train. The cutting edge of this is a new way to do it, the cutting edge of perhaps you can take this powder, the cutting edge of seeing people who they're in a dorm with taking something illegal and not getting caught. This is the world that they've grown up with. They have grown up in a world where they absolutely are sort of put through the ringer physically and mentally for the entertainment of other people, but for not very much money. So when someone says to them, what we will do, we will take you to Abu Dhabi, we will give you a series of chemical interventions, all of which are legal in the real world.
Yeah.
And then you come to Vegas, and if you win a race against 3 other people, I'll give you £250,000. And if you break the world record, I'll give you £1 million. Very, very hard to imagine what other than some internal morals would stop you doing that as an athlete, because how else are you making the money? Ben Proud would have been training since he was a child, just all day, every day, putting his body through extraordinary things. Now, Ben Proud will be aware that there will be children watching this happening, and they might be tempted to follow him, and that's on his conscience. But everything else involved, you think, well, I sort of get it. How much longer have you got in this sport? 5 years, 6 years. You want to finally make some money, and so that's what he's doing. So I understand why the athlete's doing it. And WADA quite rightly is saying that we don't know what these drugs do. And you think, yeah, but these people, they're like Formula One cars. They've been put through like unbelievable training regimes which are absolutely not natural and which bodies are not supposed to do.
People have always harmed themselves.
Yeah.
From the Colosseum and probably and before, we've always watched people. I think it was less
voluntary, the Colosseum.
But we watch people harm themselves for our sporting entertainment. What about boxing?
Well, I was going to say,
what about what we know now about contact sports and degenerative disease? I mean, we know all these things, and in some cases, people are trying really slowly to find out because they don't want to stop watching those contact sports, or they don't want to have to change the rules of those contact sports because maybe it's just a blip or maybe it's this or that. We know this. We already know that people are being made to do extraordinary and awful things to their bodies in the cause of our sporting entertainment.
Yeah, that Usyk fight over the weekend, which ended very controversially. Do you think so? That's sport. So that's sport. That's okay. And this thing in Vegas is not okay. All I'm saying is morally is a very, very thin line between the enhanced games and what sport is anyway. The one thing you definitely don't want is to encourage the massive amounts of putting drugs together in untested ways, and so all the doctors are saying, we don't know what's going to happen. And of course, you don't know what's going to happen. But
is it like that scorpion fight in Jarhead where they just, like, you'll watch anything and you'll bet on anything and it's just sportotainment? And
I think, so most sports governing bodies, the absolute key thing they understand and really know is people want what they're watching to be fair. That is. But also,
most sports governing bodies are some of the worst people out there.
Of course they are. Of course they
do it very, very badly, and they have mismanaged their sports for so long that now other opportunities are suggesting themselves. I'm not saying that that's necessarily but many, many other things. And you can see, like, all sorts of breakaway things will happen because people will feel like, I'm sick of this. You run it badly and I get no cut of it. And there's all sorts of different ways in which these kind of hegemonies and monopolies are going to break up.
Yeah.
Now that you won't ever say, oh, well, who'd screen it?
Yeah. Now that, there's so many sporting billionaires now that there are people in lots and lots of sports who are going to start saying, I might just do this myself. I might just find a way to make this slightly more interesting for me, because the sports people are the ones who are drawing the crowds, not the sports administrators. And I think that if I was an administrator in pretty much any sport, I think people have got a lot better. I think that's definitely true. But this feels like, when you look at it at first sight, it looks absolutely appalling. And when you actually pull back the covers, you go, this is sort of what's always been happening, but they're sort of telling the truth about it. That's their narrative. And if James Magnussen, the Australian swimmer, I'm sure that his body can probably take more than, say, mine. And if I was on the same regime as James Magnussen, who, by the way, came fourth in both of his races, I think you can take two lessons. One, sport has always been very, very, very dodgy. And this is almost no less dodgy than most sport has always been. But on the other side, the reason that sport makes so much money is people love it. And when people love it, you have, that phrase again, a duty of care to the people who are watching. And if you're Enhanced, this company, then you sell these products anyway. And so obviously you believe them to be positive. Then, you have to have a little look in the mirror and not just be thinking, God, I look young. RFK is about to is about to sanction more and more peptides and more of these things, so that, lots of these things are going to be legal in America. Doesn't mean they should be legal. And this is an advert for that. So sport on this side, I think it's fascinating what this says about sport and how actually, as a sporting thing, I kind of go, we've always done that. On the other side, it's, my God, what sort of a society are we becoming?
I agree. The one thing I would say as a positive was, I don't think it played that well for them in some ways, because the thing that you and I adore almost above all things in sport is its complete unpredictability.
Yeah.
And the fact that some of the people who've taken the most drugs were far behind and clean athletes won. You can never fully control this thing. And I sort of love that.
Yeah,
you couldn't control it.
It didn't work the way they wanted to. The first thing they had was one of the women's weightlifting. They had two events. They were fairly sure they were going to get a world record in. So I think they must have done in training. One was the women's weightlifting, which didn't quite come down to a world record, and the other was Christian Colbert in the swimming, because he'd already broken a world record on drugs. He'd already been given $1 million last year as part of their marketing push, and he was the only one who broke a world record. So he's now made $2 million out of this, which is quite something. But Ben Proud won one of his races, so he's got $250,000. I sort of get it. But as you say, Hunter Armstrong wasn't on drugs. He was winning. Fred Curley, the sprinter, he wasn't on drugs. He won the 100 meters in, I was going to say, a slow time, like I can run 9.7, but he ran 9.97 or something like that, which is, it's competitive. It would have put him last in the Olympic final, but he beat all the drugged up athletes.
But they reminded me of advertisers, particularly the organisers, because beforehand they kept saying, "Oh, you're going to see so many world records broken." A bit like when I look at an advert for some face cream, you're going to exercise. It's like, no, you're not. Okay, it's all a big.
Listen, I'm going to buy it anyway.
I'm going to buy it anyway, but it's all a big load of hype. And when it actually happens, I'm not seeing the thing you told me, which is really what happens with all of these things. Yeah.
And also, a lot of the swimmers are wearing the speed suits, which are illegal as well. Yes. They show, the interesting thing is the regime they have been on had made very, very, very little difference to their performance. I don't know if that's always going to be the case.
Yeah.
Because what we want to think is, oh my God, if you did take all of these things, then suddenly, you'd be running
10 years
9.4
younger.
or something.
It's just like any old retail in the sort of health beauty space.
In 5 years' time, if they keep doing it, surely they're going to beat world records, because also more and more and more people are going to do it. Because, as I say, if you are an athlete and suddenly it's happened this first time and, the world didn't end and you haven't made very much money in your career, but you do feel that your body has been abused and you've been pushed to do things you didn't really want to do, and you feel like you've been running against people who are doped up and all of those things through your career, I don't know why athletes in their kind of early 30s wouldn't be going, oh, do you know what, next year I'll do enhanced games. We'll go to Abu Dhabi. There's doctors there. I get it. It's all supervised. It feels like more and more athletes would do it.
It feels like where you go, I can't name the particular football club, but it feels like where you go where they have the special medicine and the special doctors.
Right.
There's a football, not in our country, where people used to go towards in their twilights and do very well sometimes. And maybe it will be a sort of twilight staging post.
Yes, like the senior snooker.
Which I want to say is clean.
It's drug-free.
There's no drugs in that sport.
There are no beta blockers. They used to have beta blockers. And that's poor old Bill Werbeniuk had to drink 16 pints before a match because he wasn't allowed beta blockers. Now, the organizer, they didn't release individual athletes' regimens, but they revealed that 91% of the athletes used testosterone, 79% used human growth hormone, 62% used stimulants such as Adderall, 50% used metabolic modulations, great band, 41% used EPO, and 29% used an anabolic steroid agent such as decadurabolin. So these are all the things that people have been banned for over the years, lots of which are perfectly legal in lots of places. But they're sort of finding different combinations of these things. And that's what we don't know what happens when you combine all of these things. I thought listen, as a spectacle, it wasn't amazing. They didn't break any records. I think it's a fascinating sign of things to come, though. But as parents or as, just human beings, be wary of the huge amounts of money that are going in now to marketing peptides to you and marketing things to make you look younger, train harder. Essentially, that whole thing in Vegas was an advert treated as such.
Right. Well, the last episode of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and indeed The Late Show at all, has gone out. Remember that CBS axed it in the midst of the Paramount Skydance deal, which they needed approval from the Trump administration from, and ended up getting it. Stephen Colbert said it was an honour and a privilege, the honour of my life to be here, as in that sort of very goodbye to all that way. The president, Trump, needless to say, posted about it in very, very derogatory ways, like he's talentless, he's whatever. And it's all gone. The end of a huge era, not just his era. So in some ways, I can't really say the sun is setting on late night, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I think the really interesting thing about it is when this first happened and Colbert was taken off air, it was absolutely seen as a harbinger of, oh, okay, now we have state-controlled media, and this is straight out of a playbook that we're very familiar with. And then, when Kimmel was suspended as well, we think, oh, here we go. The whole of late night is being dismantled. Satire is being dismantled. We know this playbook. We've seen this a million times before. But actually, in the time between them announcing that Colbert is coming off air and now, Kimmel is still there. If anything, he's got more powerful. Seth Meyers is still there. Everything else is still going. It feels like the FCC, who are Trump's lapdogs in this, as in so many other things, seem to have lost some of their bite. They tried to have a go at The View, and The View bit back. So it feels like it's unfortunate for Stephen Colbert, of course, but it feels like this was the wake-up call, perhaps, that the American media industry needed.
Yeah, it's interesting. The last series I saw got 3 times its normal audience because, if you say to people, you're not going to have this thing anymore and this is why, people actually showed up for it in the way that after Kimmel came back off his suspension, there was a huge sort of surge of viewers. But we have to accept equally. By the way, I don't think you can stop any of these things because, as we said earlier in this very episode, there are many, many places that will screen things nowadays, and we will definitely get to that in a minute. Yeah. We have to say that late night itself used to be massive, and even though it was incredibly expensive to produce, you've got huge writing staffs, you've got big production, you've got all sorts of other things like that. It was profitable, and you had sponsors and you had lots of ad revenue because people watched it in a linear way. And when you look at all the wars, the late night wars of the 80s, but most particularly the 90s, even then, though, these shows were mega expensive, and it's a little bit like buying sporting rights or something like that. You kind of want to have it going through your pipes, or you want to have it show in your channels, but it does, because it's something that's always been there. You know, some people will say now to you about comedy commissioning. Why am I commissioning comedy? I mean, just because we always commission comedies. Why am I doing that? Because actually people aren't watching them. And definitely the point at which I think The Late Show had got to, it cost $100 million a year to make, and it made 60 million. So you can see that it is
it's just
a loss leader.
It's there for prestige, a loss leader.
And also it's there because we've always had things like this. It's interesting, all the other rival shows ran reruns sort of out of respect.
Against this last episode.
You know, you can see what's happened. The clips are bigger than the shows. I mean, the clips get huge amounts of the opening monologue or some funny sort of moment or vignette from that night show. But they are also part of the old monoculture that is dead. In the old days, obviously, you know, you would, to put it in the most crude terms, red and blue state, or, you know, Republicans, Democrats, all watch these shows. They were part of the shared monoculture. Now, all of these shows are seen to be kind of hotbeds of kind of democratic degeneracy or whatever it is. And all of them, they are part of one complete siloed side of things, which was extraordinary and never existed in the old days. There is not a shared monoculture anymore that these shows sat at a sort of broad centre of. It doesn't exist anymore. And as I say, it was hallowed and whatever. It's interesting what he did next, Stephen Colbert. And I find this really interesting because he did this. He popped up on public access TV, which, as you know, is like mega lo-fi. And back in the old days, we thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe America has this thing where like almost anyone can make TV in Wayne's World. Wayne's World. And it's now like, all right, we live in a culture where almost everyone makes TV all the time, you know, whether you're putting on TikTok or YouTube or whatever. And he hosted Only in Monroe, which is a community access program. It's a town of Monroe, Michigan is a town of, I think, 20,000 people. And he did this actually the night before or just before he took up the reins at The Late Show back in 2015. And on his last night in the actual Late Show chair, he said, the last thing I did before I took up this job was I hosted this public access TV show called Only in Monroe, and 12 people watched. And show business being what it is, that's probably where you'll next see me. Indeed, 23 hours later, he was hosting Only in Monroe. He made it really incredible. He interviewed the two women who are the usual hosts. This is a town of 20,000 people, Monroe. It's a tiny... And when you see this is very sophisticated. They don't have a sophisticated setup as this, that we're sitting in our podcast studio. They have some sort of chairs and a little pot plant in the middle. But he got Jack White to do the music off a stereo and a reel-to-reel. He got... Eminem came on. It's kind of like, you know... they called Byron Allen and talked about, what he was doing. Jeff Daniels was there. Steve Buscemi, they happened to find that there was somewhere in Monroe called Buscemi's Pizza or something like that. Steve Buscemi, zero relation, did an advert for them. So they had all sorts of fun things, and obviously he can create something wonderful. But it is the first thing that's on his new YouTube channel. There is now one thing on Stephen Colbert's newly minted YouTube channel, and it is his appearance hosting Only in Monroe. It's sort of interesting. Lots of people are wondering what he'll do. We do know he will be writing with his son a Lord of the Rings movie.
Yes, that's crazy. Isn't it?
That is nuts. Yeah, some sort of like small section of something from the Fellowship of the Ring. So I'm sort of imagining something a bit like Rogue One. It's kind of a Star Wars story and it sits within the whole lore. But anyway, but then why would you not go and do a show if you felt like it on YouTube?
Leaving aside the political side of it for now. And that's, why I preface this by saying that all these other shows are still on. And there's quite a lot of them. They don't really need that many, is the truth. But as you say, there
are only three daily ones, and then John Oliver's a totally different thing. It's just like a one night a week
But
thing.
It's still a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't make any money at all for CBS. Stephen Colbert was obviously paid. Now, there is zero way that Stephen Colbert is going to earn less money next year than he earned on that CBS contract because of his name and because of YouTube and because he can directly get paid, the advertising money. He will be making more money. He will be making much more money.
But the show itself will be profitable because everything has become we're on one now. You're on a form of TV chat show now.
Yeah.
You're on a screened visual chat show
So
now.
he will make a fortune in the same way that Conan makes a fortune from his show. CBS are not only saving that $40 million, they're making a lot more, because the thing that's replacing Colbert and The Daily Show, I think, is very, very interesting, which is Byron Allen, who's this amazing guy. He started as a gag writer for stand-ups at 14, Byron Allen, and then he did a bit of stand-up, and he absolutely loved TV. He's now he's a billionaire. His company, which is Entertainment Studios, is worth over $4 billion. He has always run this show called Comics Unleashed, which to us would be like a panel show, really, but it's comics doing a monologue, and is sort of lightly kind of tied together. He also does another show called Funny You Should Ask, which is very similar to Celebrity Squares. So he's run those two shows for years and years and years, Byron Allen, with loads of different comics. And if you want to know, by the way, how satirical they are, Norm Macdonald once said about Comics Unleashed, I think it would be impossible to be more leashed. So, and Byron Allen will always say, don't do anything topical, because I want these to run and run and run. I want to be able to repeat these whenever I want to do them. So he does these two shows, and they've been going out after The Late Show, funnily enough. And now he said to CBS, I will pay you for that slot. I will give you money for that slot. I will buy that slot from you if you let me keep the advertising, which he was doing years ago, Byron Allen. He's really fascinating. He's made a load of money by always having smarter ideas than anyone else. So now instead of Colbert, you will have Comics Unleashed or Comics Leashed and Funny You Should Ask, just all day, every day. CBS is saying we're doing this until we can work out how to replace The Late Show, but I don't know why you would not just keep doing it, because they're getting paid for it. Byron Allen is taking all the risk. He's keeping the advertising money. He thinks he can find a way of doing it. He can run that without making a $40 million loss that CBS was making. So that's what's replacing it, which is hugely more vanilla. For sure, it is hugely more vanilla. But does America really, really need another show that's costing an absolute fortune and not paying its way, that does the same thing as other shows? Because Stephen Colbert can go and do that, because he will be doing that elsewhere. Also,
it
feels like everyone wins.
Yes, he can make a show for, I don't know, for $20 million a year, and literally 15 of that will be profit. And he can take 10 people or whatever it is from The Late Show, and they can do it. And we already know that fun, viral TV does not have to be as we've always thought of it. But the other thing is, that show can't be controlled by anybody.
Yeah.
Even if Brendan Carr and the FCC and all these people want to play sort of whack-a-mole with people getting out of line or people speaking against the great dictator. So what? Okay, there is a massive democratized thing out there that anyone can be a hit on, and you can be sure if he decides to be a hit, Stephen Colbert, on it, he will be.
Yeah.
And really good people will come there, and then no one will control them, and they won't get to YouTube, and they won't start, because if he can't possibly control any of that, because otherwise, it's impossible for him to do that. So against legacy, old-fashioned things, he might be able to exact, a measure of revenge or whatever, but you are just growing a whole load of other rebels, and as well as dispatching a rebel to someone, you just can't be controlled at all.
Yeah, that's the irony of the thing. They're shooting themselves in their foot by releasing these people from late night, because late night they have levers that they can pull. Right? On YouTube, they don't have those. They don't have the levers. So I think Colbert is going to make more money from it. CBS is going to make more money from it. The shows that are competitors to The Daily Show are stronger than they were at the time when Colbert was taken off the air. So, watch this space. But Colbert is going nowhere.
You won't be able to keep these people down.
Of course you can't.
And that I think is very, very positive.
Conan has never been bigger or richer than he is now. Your reminder that we'll be talking to Steven Spielberg soon. Any questions you've ever wanted to ask Steven Spielberg, if you send them to the rest is entertainment @goalhanger.com, and we will ask him the best or the most interesting. Any recommendations?
I really want to recommend Dear England, which is the new James Graham show. It's based on his play, but it's expanded beyond the Gareth Southgate verse into the Thomas Tuchel era. And I actually appeared in front of a select committee last week.
We haven't talked about
it, I know. Well,
How was it?
It was really interesting in lots of ways, but it was an absolute privilege to sit next to James. I think it's so fascinating. He's so interested. We talked a lot about local stories, and he talked a lot about doing stuff in Nottingham and doing stuff with Sherwood, but he's also interested in these kind of very populist kind of national stories, and to write something about the England football manager, just as when he, did that play Quiz, which became a brilliant TV series about the millionaire coughing scandal.
Yeah.
He just does things that people are really interested in. And I think he is a most fascinating and interesting person. And it was a privilege to sit next to him, Dear England, about the Gareth Southgate era and beyond, as part of, the start of World Cup programming.
Can I say, because I watched the whole of that committee, I thought you were terrific, but all the way through, and he was great. He made lots of very, very good points, but he did keep saying, and as Dear England, which is on BBC on Sunday, you never once plugged the podcast. I couldn't believe it. You could have just said, and by the way, we're talking to Steven Spielberg if you have
Okay,
any
I don't want to talk
him.
about only in Monroe and what it normally gets as public access television, but I can assure you that committee hearing would have got considerably fewer viewers than that. So I'm sorry I didn't plug the podcast
thought
on it.
You'd save your ammunition.
Okay. I actually didn't think it was necessary to do that.
If they always...
And I didn't want to use any of my time that I could have been giving them useful statistics to plug our podcast, Richard. And I have to say that I don't think it is a huge audience, that particular live stream.
ABC, always be closing. Always be closing. I'm going to recommend 3 different documentaries. So they're all on Netflix and 2 of them have something in common. The Jamie Vardy documentary, which is part of the Untold story, that I watch all of the American Untold, which are just sort of smaller stories from sport. Anyway, they've told the Jamie Vardy's career. It's not, Agatha Christie or anything like that. It's just this extraordinary story of him going from non-league and, really becoming a pro at like 25 and what happened, and then Leicester City is really, really great. And also The Miracle of Istanbul, which is about the Liverpool Champions League triumph as well, is in the same series. That's great. And the Kylie documentary, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
It's so great. Both that, though, actually, the Vardy one and the Kylie one. Again, how many times do we have to see this? The tabloid press were scum. They were scum. They were the worst of the worst. Every time you look into what they did, you're like, wow. There must have been people there. You think, how on earth are you sleeping?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the Jamie Vardy one, they do something so unnecessary and so cruel that it boggles the mind. And Kylie as well. I mean, it boggles the mind. Anyway, that aside, those 3 documentaries, I enjoyed them all very much. They're all on Netflix. Now, for our members, Marina, you've just started this incredible series. Last week's one on TradWise, I absolutely loved. But you have it, which was free to everyone, but now it's for members only. This week's one is about...
I'm talking to the brilliant pollster, James Canningasorium, who's plugged into masses of currents in a much more technical way of our times than I am, just doing it all on vibes. And this one is talking about, was Timothy Chalamet right about ballet and opera? And we get into whole, is classical music a dead art form, or actually people listening to it, they don't really realise they're listening to it.
And stats-based, really.
Yeah, and it's really it's so fascinating. Anyway, so that is for our members. If you want to join for ad-free listening and bonus episodes, it's therestisentertainment.com. Otherwise, we will see you on Thursday.
See you on Thursday.